We'll begin with the ribbing, and for that we're using our 5mm hook. Now just to let you know that the ribbing for the back body, front body and the sleeves are all the same. There's just a difference when it comes to the length of the ribbings. For the ribbing, we'll form a slip knot. Then it's chain 9. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Round 1 into the 3rd chain from the hook, half double crochet. So here's 1, 2, 3. Into that 3rd chain, we'll half double crochet. So it's yarn over, insert the hook into that chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on the hook, and that was a half double crochet. Continue working half double crochets to the end of the chain. I've completed round 1 and I have 8 stitches along this ribbing. So if we count it, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that chain 2 that we had started off with, our turning chain, is also counted as a stitch. So that's 8 stitches. Round 2, chain 2 and turn. So when we're working this round, we will not work a stitch into that first stitch because our chain 2 counts as a stitch and it's coming out of that first stitch. So continue work half double crochets into all stitches, working those half double crochets into the back loops only. So if you look at the stitch, the side facing you, that's the front loop, and here at the back, that's the back loop. We'll work our stitches into the back loops only. So it's yarn over, insert your hook into that back loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on the hook, and you continue on working half double crochets into the back loops only to the end of the round. So here's that turning chain right at the end. Make sure that you work a stitch into that 2nd chain from chain 2. If you don't, your ribbing will go askew and you won't have the same number of stitches. So if you count your stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and here's it 8. Round 3, chain 2 and turn. So basically here for the rest of the ribbing, we're repeating round 2, and you'll see what I mean by that. Here's my chain 2 and it comes out of that first stitch, so I won't work a stitch into that. It's yarn over, insert your hook into that back loop, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on the hook. Then you continue with half double crochets to the end of the round. Not forgetting to work your last stitch into that 2nd chain from chain 2. That was your turning chain. I've continued on with the ribbing, and all I've done was repeat round 2. Now you will work your ribbing for the back panel until you reach your shoulder to shoulder measurement. In my case, it was 16 inches. And you work your ribbing to your measurement that you had taken. And then for your front panel, it's your shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches. So in my case, I worked it to 18 inches because my shoulder to shoulder measurement was 16 inches, and then it's plus the 2 inches. So for the back panel, it's your exact shoulder to shoulder measurement. For your front panel, it's your shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches. And then when you're working your sleeves, it will be, you'll fit the ribbing around your wrist like so, making certain that they join at the 2 ends join, and that's when you know your ribbing is right for the sleeve. Like I said, I'm just working a sample here. Let me show you. So you'll take your measuring tape and you'll measure the length of the ribbing to get to your shoulder to shoulder measurement. And that's how long your ribbing would be. So for round 1 for the back body, front body, and sleeves are all the same. So it's chain 1, and I'm still using my 5mm hook into that same space from where the chain 1 comes out of, single crochet. Now here we'll be working single crochets all across this ribbing. However, there are no stitches to work with, as you see here. We need to work for every ridge, and this is the raised part of the ribbing. If you look at the ribbing here, you'll see that there are raised parts, as you see here. Those are the raised parts. So for every raised part of the ribbing, we'll work 1 stitch into those. And for these sunken spaces in between, we'll work 2 stitches. So it's 1 stitch per raised part and 2 stitches in between. So here's my first one, and you can see I haven't really completed a full like sort of section with a raised part and a sunken part and a raised part. Here's just a sunken part, and there's no raised part here at the end. So I'll work 1 stitch into that first one, and here I am at this raised part, and you'll see that it does form a little gap. Into that gap I'll work a stitch, a single crochet. In between these raised parts I need to work 2 stitches. So here I'll work another stitch, and then just before there I'll work a stitch. I work 2 stitches into that sunken part. Into the raised part I'll work a stitch. Into that sunken part or lowered area I'll work 2 stitches. So here's 1 and 2. Into that raised area I'll work a stitch. Into this lowered or sunken space I'll work 2 stitches. That's 1, 2, and I'll continue on to the end of the round. And it's important that you work your stitches that way. Should you work like 1 stitch in between, you're going to get a very tight fitting sweater. So if you look at it, every raised area it's 1 stitch, and in between those raised areas it's 2 stitches. And you continue on until you get to the end of the ribbing. The back panel. So we've worked our ribbing, and our ribbing should measure our shoulder to shoulder measurement. Then we worked round 1 of the ribbing, working those single crochets across. Now we'll swap out our hooks, leaving behind the 5mm hook. We'll continue with the 6mm hook. Round 2 of the back panel. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Here we're working double crochets into all stitches. To work a double crochet, it's yarn over, insert the hook into that stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, and you'll continue on with double crochets to the end of the round. I've completed round 2 of the back panel, working those double crochets right to the end. Then it's round 3 is chain 2, 1, 2, and turn. So for the rest of the back panel, all we'll be doing is working double crochets. So it's just a repeat of round 2. So you work double crochets into all stitches to the end of the round. And you continue to repeat round 2 until you get to the length that you need your sweater at. For the front body, you'll work the ribbing until it measures the shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches. So like I said, for me, my shoulder to shoulder measurement is 16 inches, and I just added 2 inches, and that front ribbing must measure your shoulder to shoulder measurement plus 2 inches. I then worked those single crochets across round 1. Round 2 of the front body, you'll replace your hook using the 6mm hook. Round 2, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. So before we continue on with round 2, we need to count the number of stitches that we have for round 1. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 23 stitches. Now in order to work the stitch pattern, you need your stitch count in multiples of 8 plus 3. Now I'm just working a sample here. Obviously you will have a lot more stitches, but I'm just giving you an idea of how to calculate your stitches for round 2. So you need a stitch count of a multiple of 8 plus 3, and in my case I have 23 stitches, and I know that the next multiple of 8 is 24 stitches. So that means to get it to a multiple of 8, I need 1 more stitch, and then it's plus 3. So it's the 1 plus 3. I need 27 stitches in total. So I'm missing 4 stitches. So that means I need to work 4 increases in round 2 to bring up my stitch count to a multiple of 8 plus 3. And that's the way you would calculate your stitches for round 2. You'll count the number of stitches for round 1, and then you need to work out that it must be in multiples of 8 plus 3. So for my 4 increases, and it's not necessarily to space out your increases equally. Just make certain that they are spaced out. Like I wouldn't go working all 4 increases in one go. I'd work an increase here, and then maybe one there, and one there, and one there. Just space them out evenly, more or less evenly. So remember, to work an increase, it's working 2 stitches into 1. So here's my first increase, then I'll continue on with double crochets until I work my second increase. I think I'll work my second increase here, and that's just 2 stitches worked into 1. It's 1, 2, then I'll continue on with double crochets until I work my third increase. And I think I'll do it right here. So here's my third increase, working 2 stitches into 1. And then I'll continue on with double crochets. I'll work my last increase into that last stitch. And here's my last increase. Now I'm just giving you some sort of idea of how to go about getting to a multiple of 8 plus 3. Remember, I'm only working a sample here. You will have many more stitches to work with. So for round 3, we chain 3 and turn. Then into the next 2 stitches, we'll work double crochets. So that's 1, 2. Into that next stitch, the post of the next stitch, here's the stitch at the top, and here coming down is the post. Into that post, we'll work a front post triple crochet. So to work a front post triple crochet, it's yarn over twice. That's 1 time, 2 times. Insert your hook into that post, going from the front, and pull up a loop. Yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. Yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And that's a front post triple crochet. Then it's skip the next stitch, and into that next stitch we'll work a front post triple crochet. So it's yarn over twice, skipping 1 stitch into that next post, we'll work, insert our hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. Into the next stitch, the post of the next stitch, work a front post triple crochet. Go back to that skipped stitch, the post of the skip stitch, and work a front post triple crochet into that post. Into the next stitch here, work a front post triple crochet into that post of the stitch rather. Now here you've just got to be very careful, because when you're working a cable, it sort of pulls to one side. So you just got to make certain that your next stitch, you'll be working your next stitch into the right stitch. So always you can turn around, and you know that we've worked 5 front post triple crochets. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And here's all my stitches that I've used. And this is my next stitch. So into that next stitch, I'll work a double crochet. Into the next stitch, a double crochet, into the next stitch a double crochet. So I've worked 3 double crochets into the 3 stitches. Then into the post of the next stitch I'll work another cable into the next 5 stitches. So to work it again, yarn over twice, into the post of the next stitch, go through, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And I'll skip the next stitch. Into this next stitch I'll work a front post triple crochet, into the post of the next stitch I'll work a front post triple crochet, I'll go back to that skip stitch and I'll work a front post triple crochet into the post of that stitch, into the next stitch I'll work a front post triple crochet, so I'll just turn over and count my stitches 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I know that this is my next stitch. Into that next stitch I'll work a double crochet, into the next stitch I'll work a double crochet, into the next stitch a double crochet. So again I've worked 3 double crochets. Then again with my cable pattern, it's yarn over twice, into the post of the next stitch, insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. Then I'll skip the next stitch and I'll work a front post triple crochet into that next stitch, a front post triple crochet into the post of the next stitch, go back to that skip stitch and I'll work a front post triple crochet, into that next stitch I'll work a front post triple crochet, I'll just count my stitches at the back to make certain of my next stitch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and here's my next stitch. Into the next stitch I'll work a double crochet, into the next stitch I'll work a double crochet, and into that third chain from chain 3, our turning chain, I'll work a double crochet. So I've ended off with 3 double crochets and I've started off with 3 double crochets. So if you look at the stitch pattern, it's 3 double crochets because that first chain 3 counted as a stitch, then it's our cable, then 3 double crochets, cable, 3 double crochets, cable, and end off with 3 double crochets. And work round 4, chain 1 and turn. So here we're working single crochets all across. Into that same stitch from where chain 1 comes out of, single crochet, and then it's continue with single crochets to the end of the round. So that's just inserting your hook into the stitch, pulling up a loop, yarning over and going through 2 loops on the hook. You continue on with single crochets to the end of the round. So I've completed round 4, working those single crochets all across. Now here, just to let you know that you've got to be very careful. It's so easy to pick up an extra stitch. So I always, at the end of this round 5, sorry, the round 4 repeat, I always turn it around and check that this last cable, here's my stitch, and I make sure that I'm working 3 single crochets to follow. 1, 2, 3. So here, it's so easy to work a stitch here, and then you just end up picking up an extra stitch. So just be careful. Always check that your stitches are correct, especially as you get to the end of the round. So if you look here clearly, here's my cable running along, and here's the stitch. Then I have 1 stitch for that double crochet, 1 stitch for that double crochet, and my last stitch here. So it's always ending off 3 stitches above those 3 double crochets. Round 5, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Now remember, chain 3 counts as our first stitch, so I will not work a stitch into that same stitch from where chain 3 comes out of. Into the next 2 stitches, I'll work a double crochet each. So that was 1, and then 2, and here I am at the cable. So here I'll work my front post triple crochet. Just to know that when we're working the front post triple crochet, I'm not going to work it here into that single crochet. I'm going to rather work it right here below that single crochet at the top, right at the top of the cable. So this is where I want to work my stitch. I hope that's clear enough for you. And that just prevents the line forming at the in between the cables for the rounds that we work. So it's yarn over twice into that cable right at the top from the rounds before. Insert the hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And then you'll skip your next stitch, and into this next stitch here is where I'll work my next front post triple crochet right at the top of that cable. That front post triple crochet is where I'll work my stitch. Into that next stitch, I'll work a front post triple crochet. So again, right here, here's my single crochet. It's right at the top of that front post triple crochet from the rounds before is where I'll work my stitch. Then I'll go back into that skip stitch and I'll work a front post triple crochet. Right in the top of that front post triple crochet is where I'll work my stitch. Then it's a front post triple crochet into the next stitch. Now just to make sure, I can turn around and count that I have 5 stitches behind the cable. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I know that this is my next stitch. Into that next stitch, I'll work a double crochet. And then into the next stitch, a double crochet. Into the next stitch, a double crochet. So then again, I have 3 double crochets. Now here again with my stitch pattern, it's a cable into the stitch, a front post triple crochet. It's a front post triple crochet into this stitch here. So it's yarn over twice, insert your hook into this part right on top of that front post from the rounds before. Then it's skip the next stitch. Here's the next stitch into that next front post triple crochet. I'll work a front post triple crochet, into the next front post triple crochet. I'll work a front post triple crochet, go back to that skipped stitch and I'll work a front post triple crochet, into the next stitch. I'll work a front post triple crochet, then I'll go back, count my stitches, 1 2 3 4 5, and I know that this is my next stitch. Here I'll work a double crochet, into the next 2 stitches I'll work a double crochet each. I have 3 double crochets. Then it's back again with my cable stitch pattern. So into that front post I'll work a front post triple crochet, then it's skip the next stitch, which is this one right here. Into that next stitch there I'll work a front post triple crochet, into the next stitch I'll work a front post triple crochet, go back to that skip stitch and work a front post triple crochet, into the next stitch I'll work a front post triple crochet, then it's turn around, count my stitches, 1 2 3 4 5, and I know that this is my next stitch. Into that next stitch I'll work a double crochet, into the next stitch I'll work a double crochet, and to get to my 3 double crochets at the end I'll work a double crochet right in the end here. So I've ended off with 3 double crochets. Round 6, chain 1 and turn. Here we're working single crochets all across. Make sure that you have 3 single crochets above those 3 double crochets. And you continue to the end of the round. I've worked those single crochets across, and here I am at the end of round 6. So when I turn my piece over, and here I see this front post triple crochet running across, and here's the stitch for the front post triple crochet, you make sure that you've only ended off with 3 single crochets after that. And that completes round 6. Here's a little tip before you go any further with your front panel. So you've worked the ribbing of the front panel and the first 3 rounds of the front panel. At that point, you would take your piece and place it above the back panel. You'd align the front panel and the back panel well. And by that I mean placing the ribbing above the back panel's ribbing. And make sure that the width of your front panel is the same as the width of your back panel. So it meets at the sides, and that's fine. Your front panel isn't too big for the back panel. If you feel that it is too big, like maybe an inch or so too big, you would have to go back and remeasure, undo those 3 rounds, remeasure your ribbing, and make sure that the measurement is correct before moving on again. I've continued on with the front panel, and I've repeated round 3 and round 4. Now you'll see that when you place your front panel above the back panel, like I've done, here's the back panel, and that's the front, and I'm matching it up well. Right at the top at the neckline, I haven't really ended off the front panel to the same length as the back panel. So the difference in the length is 3 inches. If you look here, here's 3 inches. So my front panel is 3 inches shorter than the back panel. And that's 3 inches, or it's around 8 centimeters, 7.5 centimeters. So you need to work that front panel to 3 inches shorter than the back panel. So once your front panel is worked to 3 inches shorter than the back panel, you need to now find that center of the front panel. So I went about it like this. I eliminated the cables on either side. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4. And here's my center that runs with this 3 double crochets. So I've marked that off with stitch markers on either side of those 3 double crochets. Now you may find that you may have your let's just give you an example here. Let's say that this is your first cable on this side, and that's the first one. So 1, 2, 3, and here you've got your cable as the center. That's fine. You'll mark off the cable here as your center. So it's either you're going to have your 3 double crochets as the center, or you're going to have the cable as the center. Whichever it may be, it's fine. You mark it off as the center. I've continued on working the upper front, and here I've worked 3 inches. So if I take a measure there, you'll see that it's 3 inches, and I've repeated round 3 and round 4 3 times to get to those 3 inches. Now you'll see that I've worked the pattern to that first stitch marker on one side, and here I stopped at the cable, and then I turned and worked my stitch pattern again, stopping at the cable. So I completely left out this 3 double crochet. But like if you've stopped at a cable, if the cable was your center, you would stop at 3 double crochets. So that's fine. You'd work it that way. It's just a matter of repeating round 3 and round 4 to that first stitch marker on one side, up until you get to 3 inches. You can then fasten off on the one side, and I prefer leaving a long enough tail to help with the seaming. So as you've done for the one side, the upper front on the one side, you will do the same on the other side, following the stitch pattern. Here you will attach your yarn to that stitch just after the one that's marked by that second stitch marker. So if you're beginning off the pattern with double crochets, you will chain 3, and that will count as your first double crochet. Then you continue on with your stitch pattern, working the 2 more double crochets, and then it's your front post, triple crochet, and so on repeating round 3. But like me, if you're beginning off with a front post triple crochet after the stitch marker, you will chain 4, and that counts as your first front post triple crochet. Then you'll continue on with the pattern, which is skip the 1 stitch into the next stitch of front post triple crochet, into the next stitch of front post triple crochet, go back into that skip stitch and work a front post triple crochet, and then it's a front post triple crochet into the next stitch, and you continue repeating round 3. So then it's around 3 repeat to the end, and then it's around 4 repeat, around 3 repeat, around 4 repeat, again around 3 repeat, and you'll finish off with around 4 repeat in order to get to that 3 inches, just as we had done on the side. Now that our back and front panels are complete, we can go ahead and mark off the shoulders on both panels. So using your measuring tape and that shoulder measurement that you had taken, you can place it on the edge of one of the panels right at the top, and you'll mark off your shoulder. I've used a stitch marker to mark it off. Thereafter, for the remaining shoulder measurements, you will count the number of stitches that you've marked off and mark off on the other side of your panel. You'll mark off the same number of stitches, and you'll do the same for the other panel as well, marking off both sides or edges with the same number of stitches. So on both panels, for all 4 of the shoulders that we've marked off, we have the same number of stitches. So now I've placed the front panel above the back panel and the right sides facing in, and I'll go ahead and seam along the shoulders. You'll match stitch for stitch as you go along. So you continue until you get to those stitch markers. So I've continued on, and here I am right at that stitch marker. I'll seam up right to that stitch marker. So into that stitch marked by the stitch markers, and I'll also fasten off at the same time. So I've seamed along the shoulders on both sides. That's the one, and here's the next side. With the back and front joined at the shoulders, we'll now mark off the armhole depths. So right at the top here where we've seamed up the shoulders, we'll measure our armhole depth. So here I've marked off 7 inches, and I've marked off both layers, back and front. And I'll do the same on the other side. Now I've continued on, and I've seamed along the sides of the sweater from the point where we had marked off the armholes, from that stitch marker going all the way to the bottom, and I've done that on both the sides. So here I have the armhole spaces left open. For the sleeve, we've worked our ribbing, and at this point we've measured our ribbing against our wrist, and we know that it fits around the wrist. Then we'll work round 1 just as we had done, working those single crochets all across. We'll swap out our hook, our 5mm hook, for a 6mm hook. And then it's round 2, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Into that seam stitch from where our chain 3 comes out of, we'll work a double crochet. Now this counts as our first increase because it's actually 2 stitches worked into 1 stitch. Then it's continue with double crochets to the last stitch. I've worked my way to the end of round 2, and here I have my last stitch to go. Into that last stitch, I'll work an increase, which is working 2 stitches into 1 stitch. So that was my first stitch, and here's my second. Round 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Here we're working double crochets all across. Continue to the end of the round. I've continued on working those double crochets to the end of round 3. Round 4, chain 3 and turn. Work double crochets all across. When working your sleeve, don't forget that chain 3 counted as a stitch. So you need to work a stitch into that third chain from chain 3 as well. Very often, especially beginners, forget to do that. And then the sleeve, it doesn't widen up. Now you'll continue on repeating round 2, 3, and 4 until you get to a point where the width of your sleeve measures double the armhole depth. So this is the width of the sleeve, and that should measure twice the armhole depth. And that's when you know you stop with your increases and you continue on to the length you want your sleeve at, working double crochets without any increases. I've continued on with the sleeve, and all I've done was repeat round 2, working an increase round after every 2 rounds of a round 2 repeat. So it's I started off with an increase round, and then it was a round of double crochets, a round of double crochets, an increase round, 2 rounds of double crochets, an increase round, 2 rounds of double crochets, an increase round, and so on. Now you'll stop with your increases once you measure the width of your sleeve, and at that point when it measures double the armhole depth, that's where you'll stop with your increases. Like here at this point, my sleeve measured 14 inches and my armhole depth was 7 inches. So once the width measures double the armhole depth, you'll stop with the increases and you'll continue on working double crochets, rounds of double crochets, until you get to the length that you're looking for. Now your sleeve, to give you an idea of how to measure the sleeve and the length of the sleeve, you can fold it in half like so, and at this point here, you place it at the underarm, right at the underarm of your body, and going downwards to the wrist, and that's how you'd measure. Now once you've got the length that you're looking for, you can fasten off, and I've left behind a long enough tail to help with the seaming of the sleeve. So with your yarn needle, you can thread through that tail, and then with the two edges of the sleeve brought together, I'll seam along those edges. There's no actual stitches to work with. You'll just seam across evenly. Continue all the way down right to the end. I've seamed along the edge of the sleeve going down, and here it is all seamed up. So now we'll attach the sleeve to the sweater, and it's important that you go around attaching it the right way, otherwise you could have the wrong side facing in and the right side facing out and so forth. You need your sweater with the right sides facing in. So here's my right sides, and it's on the inside. Here's the wrong side on the outside, and this is the armhole space. So you'll take your sleeve. Your sleeve is the right side facing out. This is the right side, and here's the wrong side. So you'll take your sleeve, and here's that where we've seamed along the sleeve. You'll take your sleeve, the ribbing, and you'll place it into that armhole space, going down, working all that way down, pushing the sleeve in, and you've got the outer edge of the sleeve. You'll match it to that armhole space, and here's the where I've joined the sleeve. So I'll place that join right here at the underarm. Now with my needle and thread, I can seam all along and join the sleeve to the body. Work your way all along the armhole space. I've worked my way seaming all along the armhole space, and here I am at the end. I'll fasten off. So now if I turn it the other way around, I have the right side of my sleeve and the right side of my sweater. Now for the hoodie, attach yarn to this top edge. Here you see here's the neckline, and right at the top here I'll attach my yarn. Then it's chain 3, round 1 of the hoodie, chain 3. Work double crochets all across to the other side, the top edge on the other side. I've completed round 1, working those double crochets to the top edge on the other side. Now you'll see before I work round 2, I've placed 2 stitch markers on either side of this hoodie, round 1 of the hoodie. And that's just as a guide to help me when I'm working increases. Now I need to work 2 increases in round 2, and that's one here and the next one on the opposite side. Round 2, it's chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn. Continue with double crochets to that first stitch marker. I've worked my way to the first stitch marker, and into that stitch marked with the first stitch marker, I'll work 2 double crochets. So that's my first increase. 2 double crochets into 1 stitch. Then I'll continue with double crochets to the second stitch marker. I've continued on working double crochets to the second stitch marker. Into that stitch marked by the second stitch marker, I'll work an increase, which is 2 double crochets worked into 1 stitch. And then it's continue with double crochets to the end of the round. I've completed round 2 of the hoodie. Round 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 2, 3, and turn. Here we're working double crochets all across the hoodie to the other side. I've continued on with the hoodie and I've repeated round 3. Now at this point my hoodie is worked to the crown of the head. So that means it's from the shoulders or the neckline to the crown of the head. And you'll repeat round 3 until you get to that point. We'll now create that rounded part of the hoodie. So to do that, we need to fold the hoodie, the top edge of the hoodie in half, and find the center of that hoodie, the top edge. So into that center, the folded edge, you'll place a stitch marker. Then I'll continue on with my next round, working a chain 3, turn. I'll work double crochets to 2 stitches before the stitch marker. So here's my stitch marker, and there's 1 stitch, 2 stitches, and here I'll stop with my double crochets. Continue with those double crochets to 2 stitches before the stitch marker. I've continued on with working those double crochets, and here I am 2 stitches before the stitch marker. Into those 2 stitches I'll work a a decrease. But here I'm not using double crochets. I'll be working those decreases using single crochets. So into that first stitch, insert the hook, pull up a loop. Into the next stitch, insert the hook, pull up a loop. Yarn over and go through all 3 loops on the hook. And here I've taken 2 stitches and I've turned it into 1 stitch, and that's a decrease. Into that stitch marked by the stitch marker, I'll remove the stitch marker. Into that stitch, I'll work a single crochet, and I'll replace the stitch marker into that stitch I've just worked. Into the next 2 stitches, I'll work a decrease. So it's insert your hook into the first stitch, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over and go through all 3 loops on the hook. Then I'll continue on with double crochets to the end of the round. I've continued on and I've completed those double crochets. I've completed the first round of decrease for the hoodie. So round 2 of the decreases, I'll chain 3 and turn. Again, I'm working double crochets all the way to that stitch marker. Actually, it's 2 stitches before the stitch marker. So there's 1, 2, and into that stitch is where I'll stop with those double crochets. Continue on with double crochets to 2 stitches before the stitch marker. I've continued on with those double crochets, and here I am 2 stitches before the stitch marker. Into those 2 stitches, I'll work a decrease, working a decrease using single crochets. So insert your hook into the stitch, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on the hook. Into that stitch marked by the stitch marker, I'll work a single crochet, replacing the stitch marker into that stitch. Into the next 2 stitches, I'll work a decrease. So it's insert your hook into the first stitch, pull up a loop, insert your hook into the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, go through all 3 loops on the hook. And then it's double crochets to the end of the round. Now I've continued on with the hoodie, and I've repeated that decrease round 8 times in total. So here I am, I fastened off, and you'll see that I have this little sort of gap that I need to stitch together in order to close up the top of the hoodie. So here I am, and I'll just using a yarn needle. I'll stitch along the top of the hoodie. And you can continue on until you get to the end here. I've completed the stitching along the top of the hoodie. We'll now work the edging around the hoodie. So right into this last stitch right here, we'll attach our yarn, and then then it's chain 1, single crochet into that same space as chain 1, and continue with single crochets all around the hoodie to the opposite side here. Now there's no actual stitches to work with. You need to work your stitches as evenly as possible all around the hoodie. I've worked my way, working those single crochets all across the hoodie, and here I am on the opposite side. So then it's round 2, chain 1, and turn. Now I'll continue on working single crochets into all stitches to the opposite side where I had started off from. Work your first single crochet into that same stitch from where chain 1 comes out of. I've continued on repeating round 2, and I've worked 6 rounds in total for the edging around the hoodie. So here I am at the neckline. Now we need to join these two edges of the edging to the neckline here, and for that you'll need to seam up on either side. Now you may find that these edges, they overlap, and that's fine. You'll seam them up as they overlap. Fasten off on one side. Now for the other side. Now I've placed a cord into this edging along the hoodie. So I formed my own cord. You can, if you do have these shoelace sort of cords available like these, you can by all means use them, but I will show you how to form the cord as well. We'll now form the cord for around the hoodie. So let me just tell you that you need a lot of yarn for this cord. Holding the yarn doubled up with my hands outstretched, it was 3 times that length. That's just an idea of how much yarn you would need. So with the yarn folded in half, you can go ahead and make your slip knot. if you've never formed this card before, I suggest you just try it out, just to give you an idea of the amount of yarn that you would need for the length of cord that you're looking to make. So here I have it held like so, and then the one end of my yarn, I'll get it over that hook, and I'll just hold this little point here just to help me along, and then it's yarn over and go through both the loops on the hook. So on the one side I'm taking it over the hook, and on the other side I'm yarning over and bringing it through. So here, go over on the one side, yarn over, go through 2 loops on the hook. And you'll continue until you have the length of cord that you're looking for. I've completed the cord to the length that I'm looking for. Here's the hoodie. So now I'll take half that cord, fold it in half, and I'll place it around the hoodie. So I have an idea of where I want it stitched. And here, you'll see that I'm not beginning right at the start here. I'm working my way up, let's say about 4 inches up. And I'll take my cord and I'll sort of fold it into that edging of the hoodie. Then with my yarn needle and thread, I'll go along and seam up these edges. Please don't seam the cord width. Make sure that you don't get the cord seamed into this. So you're just picking up a stitch at the bottom from the edging, and you're picking up the stitch that runs along the side of the edging. And I'm going to go all the way around the hoodie to the other side. So here I'm picking up a stitch from the edging at the bottom, and I'm going into that stitch along the edge of the edging. And my cord is tucked inside. Continue to the other side. Also stop the same distance away from the neckline. I've continued on, and here I am on the other side. I've completed this cord along the hoodie. So right at the bottom I formed a knot. So to complete the hoodie, all we need to do is weave in all those ends. To weave in all those ends, you'll be working on the wrong side. So here I have the tail end into the yarn needle, and I'm just going to go back and forth into all these stitches, and I'm trying to sort of lose the end. And that excess yarn, you can just trim it off and you're done. So you'll do that with all the ends, and that completes your sweater. Hope you enjoyed this tutorial.